President Trump reportedly suggested shooting migrants in the legs to slow them down at the border during a discussion with White House aides. The comments are included in an adapted excerpt from an upcoming book released by the New York Times. Paula Reid is following this story from the White House. Paula, hello. What are we hearing about the context for these comments?
Good morning, Don. Well, the Times reports that earlier this year, as border crossings were hitting record numbers, the president became extremely frustrated about the situation along the southern border and intent on delivering on his campaign promises to build a wall and deter illegal immigration. He started throwing out some unusual ideas.
We're closing the border. They'll close it, and we'll keep it closed for a long time. I'm not playing games.
In late March, President Trump publicly threatened to close the U.S.-Mexico border. But according to the Times reporters, in a March meeting, the president's advisors tried to turn him away from such a drastic move. He responded, "You're making me look like an idiot," and shouted, "I ran on this. It's my issue."
Administration officials were constantly having to kind of walk the president back from the precipice, right? Walk him back from the edge of what could be a crisis.
Michael Shear and Julie Hirschfeld Davis are the reporters and authors of the book Border Wars, Inside Trump's Assault on Immigration.
He made all these promises. He talked in these grandiose ways about things he wanted to do when he was in office, but then he comes in and confronts the reality of governing.
The article also details the president's other suggestions to stem migration.
They want to throw rocks at our military. Our military fights back. We're going to consider it. And I told them, consider it a rifle.
And while he said he didn't mean to shoot migrants if they threw rocks at Border Patrol agents, the New York Times reports that the president later suggested they shoot migrants in the legs to slow them down. They write he also privately talked about fortifying a border wall with a water-filled trench stocked with snakes or alligators, and he wanted the wall electrified with spikes on top that could pierce human flesh.
All right, Paula, according to the adapted excerpt published in the New York Times, the week ended with staffing changes in the administration. So what do we know about those?
That's right. In the weeks following, there was a reshuffling of the president's team responsible for immigration enforcement. We saw, of course, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen resign shortly thereafter. And once again, White House advisor and immigration hardliner Stephen Miller, he survived. He's been here throughout the administration. The concern was, though, after the loss of Nielsen, they really lost a moderating voice, someone who would be willing to stand up to the president, for example, when he was trying to close the U.S.-Mexico border, just explaining to him the nuances of immigration law and why that may not actually achieve what he hoped. So right now, the concern is there are not a lot of people who are willing to stand up to the president when he throws out these unusual suggestions. But in talking with sources here at the White House, there's also a frustration here at the White House that the Department of Homeland Security has not been willing to get on board with the Trump administration's priorities. There's a lot of frustration that they give them directives and they don't carry them out. But Don, as you know, as many people know, the Department of Homeland Security is a sprawling bureaucratic agency that is sort of notorious for having trouble putting policies into place.
And sometimes those suggestions might be questionably legally.
Snakes, alligators, shooting, yes, all very questionable, probably would go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Okay, so I know they just came out, but has the White House responded to these reports?
They have. Just a few moments ago, they released a statement. And what's interesting is they don't deny the allegations. At the beginning of the statement, they, of course, dismiss offensive fake news characterizations that have happened in the past, but they don't deny these allegations. And instead, they try to pivot and double down on the president's agenda to build a wall and deter illegal immigration. They say, quote, President Trump has clearly and publicly stated many times that he wants to make American communities safer by building a wall, closing dangerous loopholes that incentivize child smugglers and drug cartels, and implement a merit-based immigration system. So instead of taking these allegations one by one or addressing this head on, sort of a greatest hits of all the president's talking points on immigration.
Yeah, and give jobs to alligators and snakes, I guess. That goes a long way
It's a
towards
very strong union, Don.
That's it, exactly. Paula, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.